Hello and welcome to Chess with Simon. I'm Simon and this is Chewy. It's a wet May day and we are sitting by the fire looking at Bobby Fischer versus Mikhail Tal. A beautiful game, loads of pyrotechnics, played just after Tal became world champion at the Leipzig Olympic in 1960. Fischer was white. It's a fantastic game and also very interesting for the French defence. So e4, Tal plays the French, which actually gave Fischer quite a lot of trouble in his career. d4, d5. Fischer consistently played knight c3 in this position, so you can play the exchange, which is not that exciting. You can play knight d2, you can play e5, the advanced variation, but Fischer's playing knight c3, which is, you'd probably say, the most aggressive. I mean, maybe e5 is, but I think knight c3 probably is. Particularly when it provokes black to play bishop b4. So bishop b4 is a very double-edged move. Gives black an initiative on the queen side. Weakens the dark squares on the black king side. It's traditional for white to play e5, just because that pawn was attacked and the knight that was defending it is now pinned. So, but then black can play this move c5. So really creating an attack on the d4 pawn and creating energy on the queen side. a3 from white is the normal move. Now, the most common move here is for black to take and then white to take back, but black backs off, which Fischer describes as dubious, and certainly the engines give it a lower score. It's amazing, really amazing how well Fischer did in terms of being accurate and precise in a way that engines nowadays understand. I mean, this game was played 61 years ago. He was an incredible talent. Pawn b4. So black's taken the d pawn. Now my instinct here would be to snap off the bishop on just take something because you can. But Fischer plays a better move. Queen g4. Attacking that g pawn, and then once the queen takes on g7, the rook in the corner will be threatened. So consequently, the knight comes out so that when we take, the rook will be able to move to g8. Now first though, we do take the bishop and then black takes on c3. White takes here and then takes a second pawn. So if we just do a quick count, black has 6 pawns. White has 7 pawns, but white has doubled isolated pawns on the A file, so it's a complex position, but the engines are rating white more highly here. So it varies between the different engines, but probably a pawn up actually. Knight c6 by black, so attacking the pawn on e5, which white then defends, and black attacks a second time. So there's different ways of dealing with this. The engines want to go bishop f4, which makes sense. Fischer played bishop b5, pinning the knight against the king, so the knight can't take. Black then broke the pin, and white went ahead and castled. Now, Petrosian thought this pawn on e5 was hanging, although black didn't take it. Tal decided not to take it. For those that don't know, Petrosian was also a Russian world champion, a much more solid player, but a brilliant player. I mean, he could play tactically, but his style was naturally more solid, whereas Tal and Fischer were both attacking, flamboyant players. So Petrosian wanted to take. Fischer thought that after takes, then queen here, he thought white was a bit better, and he gave the example of if the queen went there, you can take and then play this. In fact, the engine wants to play queen here, slightly different, and actually the engine thinks black's a bit better. So the engine agrees with Petrosian that black could have taken on e5 and would have been just fine, but Tal prefers to keep the tension. Castle long. I mean, of course, if black's going to castle, he's got to castle long. He's already moved the king's rook. King could have stayed in the centre. It's conceivable, but you know, by castling, you're connecting the rooks. And it's a good move. So here, Fischer played bishop g5, and he says he simply underestimated Tal's reply. So now there's a whole bunch of fireworks get set off now. So Tal takes here. Now Fischer says his original intention was to take on d7, check. And then when the rook takes, take here, and then take here. But the issue is this rook move, which comes at the end. Now, this looks really bad because it looks like the queen is pinned against h2 and queen takes h2 is checkmate. There are actually two ways out of this. The first way out is to play rook a e1, which Stockfish and Deep Fritz have seen. And the second way out of it is actually to play bishop f6, which also just about gets white out of jail because it deflects the queen, and then the white queen can run away without there being a checkmate on h2. So this is not the end of days, but Fischer was right to avoid this. He also notes that taking on e7 is catastrophic because black takes on f3, check, pawn can't take back because it's pinned, king runs to h1, and then this really is the end of days because the queen is pinned against a checkmate on h2. So taking on e7 was out of the question. So having looked at this, Fischer decided to take here. His original intention being to take on d7, but he took here instead. Black takes on b4, so now there's so much going on, it's so complicated. My instinct, which actually the engines agree with, my instinct would have been to take on e7. So something like this, takes on e7, queen takes, and then rook fe1 actually just holds the position. White's a bit better here, so that would have been a way out. Fischer chose a more complicated route. Knight takes here, so again black's attacking a rook, but white is still attacking a rook. So black takes here, white takes here, but then black picks up a piece. So now black's a piece up. White has a fork, so white is able to, being a piece down, but is able to fork the queen and the rook. But, you know, I mean, the complications never stop. Rook takes g2. King takes h1. So the question is, why not king takes f1 here? This. Well, the problem is rook takes h2, which is attacking the queen. And when the queen moves, Fischer said that this gives black a winning attack. Well, actually, it's not quite a winning attack, because after the rook check, if white steps this way, then black does have a mating sequence. It's mating for 1, 2, 3, 4. So if the king stepped this way, it would be mate. But if the king steps back, actually, it's only level. So black has a scary check there. But actually, white is able to wriggle out of this because white has a pretty strong attack on the black king. So for instance, I suppose, given that there's not an immediate mate, the move that catches the eye is taking here, taking on a1, but that doesn't work very well because there's a mate straight away on e8. So, you know, white has threats of his own, and so this position is actually, it's going to come out as a draw. But instead of that, I mean, certainly Fischer saw a lot of the dangers there. Instead of that, he went to h1. So black moving to e5. White picks up a piece, black picks up a piece, and now white can take the rook here, but this just gives black a perpetual. This is a perpetual check. It's a familiar structure, and there's no way out of this for white. So, absolutely incredible game. I mean, the complexities would take so long to unravel. I suppose the reflections are, in terms of improvements, and it's very complicated, but in terms of improvements, I think, so the first question for black is bishop a5. Now, bishop a5 is theory, so you cannot say it is wrong. I mean, people play it. The engines think it's a bit worse. It's typical of Tal to do something exciting and complicated and challenging, so you cannot say it's wrong, but I think Fischer's exactly right to say it was dubious. This is already correct. Here, So when Fischer attacks g7, he says that king f8 is not good because it gives white a strong attack. Like this, and then there's a check on a3. Actually, the engines think that black's okay here. So actually, king f8 was a better move in this position than knight e7. Knight e7 is certainly not losing. I mean, as we see, actually, the game turned out as a draw. So somewhere, really, now we're looking for improvement for white. And the improvements for white would have been, I think, as we discussed, actually, bishop f4 here is a definite improvement for white. So this just defends the pawn, keeps the tension, and the game goes on. And also, actually, later on, there's a6, which started to soften up the queenside pawns where black's going to castle. But after this sequence, here, I'm trying to think what other... I think after this sequence... Oh, rook e1. So rook e1 again leaves white a little bit better. But, you know, this is 60 years later with, you know, all the powerful engines running against it. So it's very easy for me to say. Beautiful game, beautifully complicated. It must have been great to watch. And we will look at more from these two great players as time goes on. I think Chewy's particularly enjoyed that. I hope you're all well, and we'll see you soon.